This is Thursday, September 7th. We're in West Newfield, Maine, at 123 Sanborn Road, which is the home of Marilyn and Joe Crocker.
That's right.
So,
Here
so,
we are.
so welcome. So maybe let me answer this question. What was your first connection with the institutes? About what year did that happen?
I'll let you start.
Oh, Lord.
I think for you it was
I
64.
couldn't tell you the year.
64, I think it was, honey.
I think the first thing that I heard about the Institute was from Bishop Matthews. And he was my bishop.
Uh-huh.
And then there was a course that was being held at Rolling Ridge, where Don Clark was the director of it, resident director. And I went to that course and haven't been the same since.
But there's an even better story that Joe is skipping over. He came back from a summer in Selma,
Yeah.
and there were a whole group of clergy who had been gathered together by Bishop Jim, and of course you don't say no to your bishop, and so they were all participating in this PMC, which was the precursor to the PLC. And Joe came back to report to Bishop Jim of what he had done in Selma that summer. And Bishop Jim said, "There's somebody I want you to meet." And you can take the story from there.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the detail of the story, but I think it went something like this: that the bishop said, "Well, I've got someone I want you to meet," and of course it was Joe Matthews. And I think the bishop said something about that I had been down to Selma for, I guess I was down there for a couple of weeks anyways, several weeks, during all the demonstrations. And Joe Matthews' first words out of his mouth was, "What did you think you were doing down there anyways?" And I was not expecting that kind of a response. But he came across immediately as someone who demanded reflection and interpretation of like every moment of your life. And needless to say, that left an impression on me, because I was not expecting that kind of a question.
Do you remember how you answered it?
No, I don't recall. I tried to explain some of my responsibilities and some of the things that had happened, but I did not get to the eschatological dimension.
Why'd you go down? Talk about Selma.
Well,
I'm sure there's people who listen to this who don't even know what that was. And what were you doing there?
I was involved in the city of Boston in a parish that had a mixed racial congregation. And I was doing some work in the south end of Boston and doing some work in Roxbury. And so the bishop knew about that, of course, because he appointed me there. But I was director of a community center. And so the racial situation at that time, the whole business of the racial responsibility that you have, was the hot issue. And the question was put to us, can we go down to support the demonstrations that were going on? And so that there were a group of us that went down. And before going down, I had contacted the bishop and said, yes, this is what I'm going to be doing. And sort of sought his
Blessing, as it
his
were.
blessing, as it were, And so we went, there were a group of us that went down there. And it was a profound experience. There was considerable difference of working in a black part of the city of Boston, where, every person that I encountered during the day was of a different race, and I experienced myself as well accepted there. But to go to Selma and to be involved in the kind of activity that went on down there was not so much life-changing as it was life-deepening. And
Meaning what? Life deepening.
well, deepening my resolve to be involved in where the social pain was, and to be a part of, hopefully, the reconciliation and the alteration of social patterns that were prevalent then. And that was a hot time.
Yeah, this is interesting because I'm just reflecting on something that I hadn't realized before, but as a precursor to our involvement with the Institute, both of us had an experience in the civil rights in the South, because in 1965, now this this was prior to my experience, but in '65 I went south with the American Friends Service Committee and was part of a two-person faculty, and we quickly enlarged that with other volunteers to work with kids who were to enter the previously all-white schools. They were pioneering in integrating the previously all-white schools in none other than Newberry, South Carolina, John Epps' hometown. And of course I didn't know that until years later. And I was there for the summer doing tutoring to prepare kids for what, and also acclimating them to white faces, because both the teachers were white. And then we gathered around COFO workers, and I can't remember what COFO even stands for, but it was a voter registration group that was there working to register voters, and they partnered with us and they helped us with the school during the day, and then we did adult literacy in the evenings to help people register to be able to vote. But I just realized that was probably what awakened me to the social pain that allowed me to be much readier, given my background, to hear the call of RS1, which of course I heard because Joe had been my minister, and he was not my minister. I mean, he moved on, but of course there was a relationship that had been established. Very long courtship.
Still going on.
A 6-year courtship. And so he recruited me to go to RS1 after he'd been through the PLC. And
I was trying to think whether that was a time, I guess it was around that time, shortly thereafter, that I went down to Vicksburg, to Vicksburg, Mississippi.
I think that was '65, because I think
65.
you were there the same summer I was. Well, actually, no, I might be wrong. Maybe I was at Newberry in '64. Anyway,
What did you do in Vicksburg?
Similar work. I mean, I worked with a lot of people in the community, and we did have a march that took place there. And then there was a group of us, mixed racially, who decided that because of our connection with the Methodist Church, we would go to the Methodist Church in Vicksburg, the major downtown church. And we were racially mixed. Went to the church, walked in, and sat down, and before the first hymn was concluded, there were 3 ushers that came up to us and told us we would have to leave. And I told them I was a Methodist minister from the New England Annual Conference, and that makes no difference. We're asking you to leave. And they insisted on it, and we were ushered out of the church. I believe it was the same church, I'm not mistaken, I think it was the same church that later on the bishop was asked to leave because he was with another bishop who was black when he was there in Vicksburg. But those were different
days.
times. They were different times and difficult times. But I think they shaped me in making me ready and receptive to what was going on in Chicago.